The New York Giants, and I love their offseason so far, are listening to trade offers for Kayvon Thibodeau, the rush end, who they drafted back in 2022. But then they got Brian Burns in a trade with Carolina. They just drafted Abdul Carter. And because of that, he's like the number 3 pass rusher, and his numbers are regressing. And so you say to yourself, well, what are you going to get for the number 3 pass rusher? Something is happening in the NFL, and I was talking to former NFL scout John Middlecoff on my podcast last night. The world has changed because of all these aggressive young general managers.
Because the cap is so big right now, there are so many options with trades. And I talked to Howie about this. When I first started working for Howie in 2010, he was on the forefront of the NFL forever wasn't that trade heavy. So people are willing to, hey, you want this guy, you want to trade draft picks, you want to do this. So there is just a lot of action, which I think stalls some deals because it gets so expensive. It's like a house.
So all these young GMs are battling against one another. And like we talked about, J-Mac and I talked about Malik Willis. And J-Mac's like, he's not going to get $35 million. Just think about this. Who needs a quarterback? Arizona. Oh, they've got a young, aggressive GM. And the Falcons may need another quarterback, and they've got a young, aggressive general manager. And the Jets could use Malik Willis, and they have a young general manager. And the Steelers could use a quarterback, and they've got a first-time general manager. So it used to be, I mean, last year, let me look this up. Last year there were, 22 in-season trades last year. That is the most since 1995. So what you're getting is this new world of all these sharp young offensive coaches and sharp young general managers, and they are trade-centric. So I think Malik Willis, and people say, well, Malik Willis only has 6 starts. I think that's very, very interesting. Can you tell after 6 starts if a guy has it or doesn't? Now, obviously, the Packers are well run. They've got a good offensive coach. They have weapons. But I will say this about Malik Willis. He came from Tennessee to Green Bay late in camp in August. They were playing him 3 weeks later, and he was exceptional. And it's like, okay, so this guy can learn a playbook fast. That's important. And he also fit into Green Bay's culture very quickly. There's discussions last year. People were saying, is he better than Jordan Love? I don't think he is. But there were discussions about it.
Okay. It feels like we're drifting a little off course here. The conversation started with the Giants, and now we're jumping to Malik Willis, the Green Bay Packers, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a lot to unpack, but let me try to reel it back in. Right now, as I look at the New York Giants, especially considering how their seasons have unfolded, particularly last year, and with the possibility of having a young quarterback like Jackson Dart, I am firmly in a specific camp. I believe the Giants should go all in on offense. Whatever that looks like in free agency, whatever that looks like in the draft, they need to commit fully. I'm reminded of what the Chicago Bears did when they hired Ben Johnson. The philosophy was simple. You go all in, and you figure the rest out later. I am a firm believer that when you secure a young quarterback, your primary objective should be to support him to the maximum degree. You want to put him in the best possible situation to succeed on the field. I'm not necessarily talking about winning immediately or making the playoffs right away. I'm talking specifically about creating the conditions for him to play well. I want to see him operating in what are essentially perfect conditions: a clean pocket, reliable targets, a functional run game. Beyond just comfort, there's the developmental argument. When you have a good offensive line, a strong running game, and capable receivers, your young quarterback is going to develop much faster. He's going to be able to work on his craft, refine his mechanics, and learn the nuances of the position in a controlled environment. Sure, there's an argument to be made that facing adversity early in your career can build resilience and mental toughness. That's important, no doubt. But when it comes to the actual on-field development of passing mechanics, reading defenses, and processing information, you're going to learn a lot more when you're not running for your life on every snap. If you don't have those foundational pieces, you might get a crash course in what it's like to play behind a bad line, but that's not the same as genuine development. In your first or second year, you're still trying to figure out the basics of being an NFL quarterback. Throwing him into a situation where everything is collapsing around him can be too much, too soon. That's why I'm in the camp that believes the Giants need to dedicate themselves to this offensive overhaul. It's all in service of creating an environment where their young quarterback can thrive. I was watching some footage of Malik Willis recently, and it got me thinking about timelines and expectations. But with Jackson Dart, I have a different feeling. I believe in him, and I'm excited to see him continue to develop. However, the goal should be to reach a point where the organization can arrive at an absolute bona fide conclusion about him. Remember when Colin was floating the idea that the Giants should trade Jackson Dart and draft Fernando Mendoza instead? Giants fans made their feelings on that very clear. I saw it all in the comment sections, and I was confident that was the prevailing sentiment. And obviously, that's not even an option anymore. This was back when there was still speculation about draft positioning, whether they'd get the #1 pick, who they might target, etc. But the point I'm trying to drive home is this. You want to reach a point where no one in their right mind would ever suggest something like trading your young quarterback. You want to arrive at that firm, undeniable conclusion. Colin wouldn't have said that about Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Drake May, right? So the goal is to get to that place where there's no shadow of a doubt. This is our quarterback. We are building around him. We are going all in. We know he's our guy. And when problems arise, when we come up short or things don't look quite right, we don't have to question the quarterback. We can point to the offensive coordinator, the play calling, the supporting cast. We want to solve that riddle. We want to be firm and conclusive about the most important position on the field. When I think about how to achieve that, I've come to a personal conclusion. Anytime you have a young quarterback, if you have to sacrifice your defense to go all in offensively, I actually think that's probably the best approach right now. I'm not saying this is the best way to win immediately, but if you're still in the evaluation phase, if you're still trying to figure out, is this our quarterback? Then I want to give him everything he possibly can have. I want to remove every excuse. I want to create a situation where, if he fails, I know we gave him everything. And here's the harsh reality. Once you pay him, once his contract eats up a significant portion of the cap, you're not going to be able to surround him with all these weapons anymore. The supporting cast is only going to get worse from that point forward. So, if he can't be great with this level of support now, before the big contract, that tells me everything I need to know. If he can't thrive in a situation where we've invested everything around him, then we have our answer. Contrast that with situations where teams are trying to evaluate a quarterback like Cam Ward, and you hear excuses like, well, I don't know how good he really is because his offensive line was bad, and his receivers weren't getting open, and the scheme was questionable. You're left trying to parse through all these variables, and it becomes infinitely harder to make a clear judgment. You're stuck in a gray area. So that's where my mind is with the Giants. I'm not saying that to achieve this offensive investment, you have to make specific trades or sign specific free agents. It's just the general philosophy I would adopt. And it's funny because the segment before this, Colin was talking about the Steelers franchise tagging George Pickens, and the bottom line question was whether the Giants are becoming too top-heavy. And my response to that is, with a young quarterback, I would rather be top-heavy on offense. If that's the avenue we have to take, then I'm all for it. Trades are always complicated, though. They're always complex, whether it's football or basketball. You start talking about future picks, 2029 unprotected, and you're just sitting there thinking, I don't know how to make sense of that. In the NBA, it's even harder because you never know who's coming out in a few years. You might be trading away a pick that turns into Victor Wembanyama or Cooper Flag. You just never know. In football, it's a little clearer. If you're trading a pick for next season, you have a better understanding of the landscape. If you acquire a 2027 pick from the Cardinals, you can start to do the math. You can look at their roster, their quarterback situation, and make an educated guess about where that pick might land. You have a conceptual understanding of how many quarterbacks are coming out, which teams might be looking for one, etc. But if I'm the Giants, I'm not overcomplicating it. I'm going top-heavy in the draft, top-heavy in free agency, everywhere. Offense, offense, offense. I'm just going all in on that side of the ball. It's interesting to look at how other teams have approached this. The Broncos did the opposite with Bo Nix. In his second year, they went all in on defense, especially in free agency. They made some big moves on that side of the ball, and the defense was awesome. But then people started asking, what's wrong with the offense? They had a good offensive line, but the receivers led the league in drops. And now, Sean Payton has given up play calling duties, so you could blame some of the issues on that as well. It just shows the different paths you can take to support your quarterback. And look, the most recent example of a quarterback who had insane success early in his career is Patrick Mahomes. And it's not an accident that he had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, along with a great offensive line and a brilliant play caller in Andy Reid. It wasn't until later in his career, maybe around 2022, that the Chiefs started to really focus more on the defensive side. They didn't have to go all in on offense because they already had it. They already had the weapons. But that blueprint, investing heavily in offense around a young quarterback, is a smart way to go about it. You can look at the Eagles, too. They did the same thing with Jalen Hurts. They went out and got A.J. Brown to pair with Devonta Smith. They fortified the offense. They made sure their young quarterback had everything he needed to succeed. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Jackson Dart and the Giants' approach? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So, whether you agree with me or disagree, either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's have some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you be a part of it. I want to build something we all genuinely feel connected to, something we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.